Hey everyone, let's talk about RAW versus JPEG photos. It's a debate that's as old as digital photography, or at least modern digital photography. A lot of people shoot JPEG. There's nothing wrong with that, and cameras are producing better and better JPEGs all the time. So if you just shoot JPEG, you're not wrong. And there are some advantages to that, namely the size of the files and the amount of space they take up on your card and on your computer. But most serious professional, commercial, sports, etc. photographers shoot in the RAW file format from whatever the camera is. And there's a couple advantages to RAW, and there's some disadvantages. But we're going to take a quick look at a comparison of images taken simultaneously and written as RAW and JPEG files. So the other thing I'll mention is these were shot with a Fuji X-T3, and Fujifilm is known for having probably the best JPEGs in the business. So these are top quality JPEGs that we're comparing to the RAW files. And I did a bunch of underexposed and overexposed images. We're going to start with the normal exposed images, and you can see here's the RAW file, the DNG conversion from Lightroom, and here's the JPEG. And when you switch back and forth, you don't really see a difference, and actually the JPEG has a little bit better color. So these are totally unprocessed, and we'll look at them side by side. We'll zoom in here. One thing you'll notice in the RAW file is you have a slightly better resolution on the detail. The LG logo is a bit clearer on the left than on the right. The right side is the JPEG, and the left side is the RAW. And let's talk about the other big difference in RAW and JPEG before I show you a couple examples. So here we are in the RAW file, and you come over to the white balance selection area. I can select auto, daylight, cloudy, shade, tungsten, fluorescent, flash, custom. So is daylight. Let's click on daylight. We have 5500 on the color temperature. Tint is +10. Now if we go to the JPEG, our options are auto and custom. There's also sliders, but you're only sliding between 1 and 100. You can't actually dial in the color temperature. So doesn't usually matter for most people, but if you're doing some type of technical imagery and you need to have a specific color balance or white balance selected, you should definitely shoot your RAW file format. It just gives you a lot more flexibility in the white balance. So let's start looking at some photos. We're going to start with an overexposed photo, and we're going to process the RAW and JPEGs identically. Excuse the poor composition here. I was just shooting this as a demonstration shot. So I'm going to hit auto. We're going to try to pull this overexposed photo back into the normal world. I'll dial in like -2. Let's go to, negative. Here's -3. I'll type it in. On the exposure, I want to see if we can get some color back in the sky. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. But now I'm going to jump over the JPEG, and I'm going to do the exact same adjustments to the JPEG. And you can see the RAW file maintained the color of the building way better than the JPEG did. This got like crazy gross green, right? So if you're overexposing your photos by 3 stops and you need to recover that data and make a photograph out of it, it's way better to have a RAW file to work with than a JPEG. Let's come to this next set of overexposed RAW files. I'm going to turn on the highlight blinkers. So here's the RAW file, totally blown out highlights in the sky, the side of this building, and some detail here. When we click to the JPEG, you can see even more of the photo is showing blown out highlights. Pay attention to this area here. On the RAW, it's not blown out. On the JPEG, totally blown out. So again, these are the same exact photos taken at the exact same instance, written at the same time. The camera was set to capture RAW and JPEG. So let's turn off the blinkies and let's try to recover this photo again. So here's another we'll do another -3, and we'll come to the JPEG, process it identically. Again, the color, blah. The RAW file, totally acceptable photograph. The JPEG looks completely damaged. Let's zoom into them side by side. The JPEG jumped to the left here, the RAW is on the right. And we're loading, I'll pause it. And they're both loaded. And besides the garish color in the JPEG, you also have less detail preserved in the image. You can see the side of this water tower. You can see the banding almost all the way through on the RAW file, but on the JPEG, totally lost. So you are losing detail, you're losing color integrity, and the photo is not as recoverable. So here we are in another set of overexposed photos. It actually doesn't look too overexposed to the layman. Here's our blown out sections of the RAW file, and here's the JPEG. Again, same exact photo, one is RAW, one is JPEG. You can see how much more information is lost in that blown out highlight section. Turn that off. And we'll do an autocorrect. Let's bring it down. I want to get some detail in the sky back, so we set at -2. I want to see the building detail, so we'll come up to 100 on the shadows and bring the highlights all the way down. So this kind of looks like an ugly HDR photo, but I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. Let's do the same correction to the JPEG file, and you can see the sky has lost all of its texture in that highlight area that we saw earlier. More as the RAW, you still see contrails, you still see clouds, texture in the sky throughout. And we'll go side by side again. Here RAW is on the left, JPEG's on the right. We'll zoom in and pause while it loads. So it's loaded here. You can actually see the JPEG looks a little bit sharper, but you can see artifacts in the sky itself, digital artifacts. It's all kind of falling apart. Here's a nice beautiful cloud here, and over here on the JPEG side, not so beautiful. Everything's blown out. Again, it's a little bit sharper on the JPEG, but we can adjust sharpness over here on the final image if we need to bring up the sharpness. But again, the RAW file gives you a lot more latitude to work with if you missed the exposure. Now let's jump to an underexposed photo. Same exact composition, same scene. Here we go on the processing. I want to pull up some shadows, make the shot brighter. The auto works pretty well. Let's go all the way to 5 on the exposure. So we're totally cranking up on the exposure. I want to see the building, and this is going to get ugly, right? Lots of green, lots of grossness. Let's do the same thing to the JPEG and see what happens. Boom. And now let's look at them side by side. JPEG's now on the left, the RAW is on the right. I'll pause while they load. And we're back. So again, this is some extreme shadow recovery. +5 on the exposure. We had a severely underexposed shot. We went +5, and we slid the shadow slider as well. Let's zoom into this ugliness. You can see on the JPEG you have all these artifacts. I mean, there's a ton of noise here on the RAW file too, but you have these blue spots that show up. Again, an extreme example. Look at all this green, solid green there. the file just kind of falls apart. So, and let's see, one more example of extreme underexposure. Here we are with the sun. We'll go auto. That doesn't look very good, does it? This is on the raw file, but we bring it brighter. Recover some shadows. And same thing to the JPEG. Now that's a gigantic difference. So again, this is stuff you'd never, if you missed the exposure that bad, you probably are going to walk away from this photo. But in this example, you've got, wait for the load. So the raw file is here over on the right, the JPEG's on the left. Again, a little bit sharper on the JPEG, but we haven't touched the sharpness settings on the raw. We zoom out though, how are those shadows looking? Pretty dismal on the JPEG. Not so great on the raw either, but you can see the file's completely fallen apart. In the raw file, you can still see the buildings and the facades and the windows. It's bad, but you can still see it. Over here on the JPEG, nothing. It's completely lost to shadow. So raw files will give you a greater dynamic range. The color might not look as good out of the box, but you have more latitude with the color. And excuse the falling things in the background. So advantage of raw, white balance selection, better shadow recovery, better highlight recovery, more latitude in the color. Advantage of the JPEG, smaller files don't take up as much room, probably easier to work with in a sense because they're opening faster on your computer, saving them faster, moving around. If your exposures are fine, if you're not missing exposure, there's really, the difference between the raw and the JPEG is negligible minus the white balance adjustment. But if you miss the exposure or you're working with a very dark scene and you want to pull out some shadow detail from your darker areas, you're going to be much better off with a raw file. Right, let us know if you have any questions, and hopefully this was a good illustration of the two types of files.